So we're like, would you ticket it illegal for being illegally parked? And they're like, yeah. And then why you're asking, we're like, well, that car over there is illegally parked. And they're like, have a nice day. And then we sit there, and then he's like, you guys are interfering with what I'm trying to do here today. And we're like, we're standing on a public sidewalk. How is that interfering? It's another question. Like, he just states, he pretty much plays his hand that I'm going to get you for interfering with an investigation or my duties. And then we ask him how standing on a public sidewalk would do that. And then he's thinking about it. He's like, have a nice day. I mean, this officer must have told us 19 times to have a nice day, because he knew there was nothing wrong we were doing. We're at a safe distance. We're not all up in his business. We're not yelling. We're not F you, F this, go ticket yourself.
There's a lot of folks that we even may meet that say, oh yeah, we hate the cops too. And I'm like, hey, I don't hate the cops. It's the institution that I don't like, because the incentives are all perverse. And that's the conversation we try to have with the officers. Is like, hey, like I'm not saying you're a bad person or you may have good intentions, but it's this whole institution itself that's flawed. And like we try to communicate that stuff. And
well, now, do you identify yourself? Do you give out cards?
Yeah,
sure.
We
So they
write
know
notes
who you are.
and put them on their windshield when
Right.
they're parked illegally and sign our names on them. I give them my email address if they want to contact me. I mean, I'm responsible for my actions, so.
Okay, real quick question from Ethan, and then I'm going to exercise moderator's privilege and ask one last question.
All right, this discussion on privatizing or market solutions is very interesting. Here's a market solution I don't think anyone has really talked about, is why doesn't Detroit or any of the big auto manufacturers sell embedded video and recording equipment with their vehicles? I mean, this is a simple technological mashup. It's a simple fix. Flip video camera is $80, records 80 an hour worth of high quality video, on 2 AA batteries. Why can't you have this embedded in your vehicle as either an accessory or as part of the actual vehicle? I mean, modern automobiles are extremely complex and have a lot of computer systems. This is an easy fix. I don't understand why no one has done this.
Probably because the automotive industry is heavily regulated by the government.
Then why don't people sell these as accessories?
there are some kits.
The aftermarket market for automobile accessories is huge.
Yeah, there are some kits available, and actually we may put something on top of like just here's like a $50 kit, here's a $200 kit.
Yeah.
Whatever you want to do.
The second comment I'd like to make is, this entire discussion on privatizing police work, it seems to me, I understand the thrust of it, but I think that there are some structural parameters about the way that nation states exist and the way that states, localities, and nations exist that make maybe privatized police impractical as a solution. I see the idea of transplanting governance from one place to another. Like there was an economist, Paul Romer, who talks about charter cities. He wants to essentially put Hong Kong everywhere and have governments compete against foreign governance in the same territory, and that competition seems to have more of a a desirable social outcome than Blackwater. So I mean, it's a difficult issue, right? Because you want to create incentive compatible structures. Because the problem with competition in law enforcement is very fundamentally one of perverse incentives, as you noted.
Right. I guess to answer your question, I mean, personally, the idea of a nation state is just an arbitrary construct, like the belief that we have these rights.
I mean, but you're not going to take that down the nation state.
Well, maybe not today, but we advocate a peaceful evolution. And like 100 years ago, people tried one form of government and then another form of government, just a revolution around a hub of authority. We're saying, no, you own your life. You have a right to what you produce. Sure.
Well, what I'm suggesting is perhaps there was an incentive.
Trying to wrap this up.
Yeah. Or all I would say too is that, fine, like you feel the need that there has to be a nation state, that you said you have some strong arguments without getting into them or whatever. With the nation state that you want coming after me to get what you want, would you send men with a gun to my house to pay for your protection?
Yeah.
Because would you let the people that I want to live with not have our nation state?
I don't want to fantasize about what the next nation state looks like, but I do want to think about how to devolve the concentration of authority and create law enforcement structures that compete with each other as a structural matter. As a matter of structure.
Yeah, I was just going to say that. I'm going to ask one more question, but everyone is welcome and invited to join us at Sasha's on Shaw, which is just down on, what was the actual address exact?
4065
Sean Third.
Sean Third.
Yeah, so that is not very far from here. It's about 3 miles. Several of us that work here live in that neighborhood, so we know exactly how long it takes. About
And
10
Marv,
minutes.
who is fixed, is near there if anybody wants to stop by and sign the guest book and stuff, so.
Yeah, but one last question to all the panelists, but primarily to Redditt. A lot of what, and when you were talking, you said that there's this sort of us versus them mentality with the police and civilians. And now I've never been a police officer, and I'm only 27 years old. But it seems to me that a lot of this is a fairly recent development. I think it's been around since the 60s, at least, because certainly the guys that were busting heads at the Democratic National Convention had that mindset. But I don't think that mindset was that deeply ingrained by, say, 1930, 1940. And it seems that it's taken on a complete new evolution at this point with the sort of militarization of the police. Everything is a SWAT raid, and everything, the most minor offenses are, the reaction is, well, let's get a tank and load it up with men in armor and, rush in there like this is a war zone. So what do you think is feeding that ideology, that mindset, and what is the most immediate thing that you think we can do about it, aside from some sort of huge structural change, or do you think it requires a huge structural change?
Well, wow, that's a question.
Yeah.
I think that the culture that we see in police departments, and I think it goes back further than that. I think it's been ingrained since the inception of police work. Police departments in the United States really formed post-slavery or during the latter stages of slavery as groups and entities designed to go out and get runaway slaves and really enforce the laws and the wills of the people who were in power. And I think that's been the dynamic all the time, but I think that spreads beyond just the police department to our society generally. Much of what you see in police departments across the country is really a microcosm of the dynamics that exist in our country relative to race and power. I think it's really being amplified now. If you look at what's going on around the nation with the Tea Party and people who are protesting Barack's nationality and things like that, it really is kind of coming to a head with the immigration arguments. There's a struggle, I think, going on for the soul of the nation, and police departments have always been that blade that would ensure that people who were in power at the inception of the nation, white male dominance, was what it was and should be maintained at all costs. And then you started to get towards the latter part of the 20th century an influx of some minority officers and maybe some different perspectives on these departments. But that culture of authority and using that authority and exercising that authority at all costs, especially in particular communities, has always been prevalent. But now we have an opportunity. This is the most progressive generation in the history, or one of the most progressive generations in the history of this country. All of the kids that I know grow up with some understanding of other cultures, other people, respect for those other cultures and other people and religions, and now is an opportunity in history to really start to address some of the issues we've seen plague us for years. And I would like to see more people in law enforcement. That's why I made the point about videotapes and objective evidence empowering those progressive officers. I know that sounds like an oxymoron, but it's not. There are many, more than you probably would think, to act on what they believe and to impact the culture around them. Wherever you are in the criminal justice process, I think if you've come from a community that has suffered under the oppression of the system, whether you're a judge, a police officer, an attorney, wherever you are, you should insist that everyone be equally valued in the process, period. It's non-negotiable. And my closing statement is, before I went to the ACLU, I started an organization called Project Peace. It's been dissolved, but it was an organization that I co-founded with a young man who was a former gang member and a former prisoner. If you can imagine that combination of co-founders, former cop, gang member, prisoner, co-founders of an organization. And we used to say, look, man, the standard is accountability across the board. We don't care if you have a gang rag and a gun or a badge and a gun. When you come into our communities, around our families and our children, respect the dignity of the people in that community and value the lives of the people in that community, period. Police departments have never really embraced that in the soul of them. They're on paper it looks good, but in the soul of them, they've been out to preserve the power structure as it is. And that's what drives what you're talking about.
Any final words, guys?
I'm good. I hope everyone comes to the meetup. We're gonna have a good time. So
Yeah, if anybody donates some, $20 or more and needs a t-shirt, let us know.
yep.
All right, a round of applause
Yeah,
for
appreciate
all our
it.
panelists.